What was the hardest decision you've taken as a leader, and what helped you to prompt the best course of action? Go ahead and start us off, Eric.
True.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part? What's the question again? What was the hardest
What
part or
what
decision
was
we've
the
had to
h-
make as a leader?
what was the hardest decision you've had to take as a leader, and then what helped you to prompt the best course of action?
Okay. I would say the hardest part was for me to fire myself in my business. After my business grew beyond, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 employees, my ability to be able to be a good salesperson and a good marketer was no longer valuable to the company anymore. The company needed a leader. They needed a competent manager. They need someone that was actively recruiting. And it was difficult, right, to hire a COO in my business and start to turn over the day-to-day decisions that had for 15 years really become part of my fiber. And it was like this big thing I thought was going to be a relief because everybody that gets into business talks about this day that they could step aside. And my reality was when I stepped aside, I drifted into like this mild state of depression because making those decisions and as much as I complained about it, being in the middle of chaos was fulfilling to me. So I slowly had to learn how to gain fulfillment from doing other things in the business that were quite frankly long overdue, but I wasn't willing to make the change as a person to be that person and be that type of leader. And for me, I leaned into quite frankly collective genius. Was fortunate to be surrounded by a bunch of other people that have either were going through the same path or had been through it. And I implemented EOS about 6 years ago, and that was the thing that slowly started to educate me on the historically correct way to run a business and lead people. And it's been everything to where I've gotten today.
That's dude, I'm not gonna lie, that's actually gold. Like I know I love to bust your chops, but that's gold. I appreciate that right there, Leon. What are your thoughts on this two-part question?
So the hardest decisions typically as a leader, everyone on this show today has done it. It's letting go of human beings. There's whether it's layoffs because your business, the market shifted and you needed to do that. I know Eric and I had that conversation when that happened. When the market shifted, every business had to recalibrate. Going back to what we were just talking about with Walmart and all these other companies, closing stores, they're recalibrating based upon their goals and where the market is today. Those are super hard decisions, even when getting rid of employees that are not meeting KPIs and consistently doing the job that you've hired them to do. That's a really tough decision to make. But on the other side, generally, when you make those decisions, to CJ's point earlier, you're doing what's best for the business and not necessarily what's best for one individual. So those are the hardest. A sneaky second that is, a less, I guess, from a standpoint of personal and emotional, is quite frankly is just delegating some of the day-to-day tasks that we all think as leaders that we are the only ones that can do them at a high level. Sometimes those are the hardest decisions to make in your business, of letting go, especially as you grow and scale as a real estate investor. So the first is always letting go of human beings, and the second would be just replacing yourself, to Eric's point, on even some of the most minute little things that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, no, I like that. I do like that. CJ, what are your thoughts?
Hardest decision. I actually shared this when I did Steve's podcast back in 2020. I'll never forget the day. Still, I was at a point in business where things weren't going the way that I needed them to or wanted them to, and was just really frustrated about my lack of progress in not just management but scaling at that time. This is in 2017. There was somebody in the same office building as me that had a consulting business that I had heard about from some other small business owners in town. And I just walked into their office. The lady who was one of the owners was on the phone. I sat down at her desk in tears. She asked me how she could help me. And I told her that I felt that I got my business to the highest extent of my ability at the time. And I just simply needed some help. And I heard that they could offer some help. To date, this has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. not having enough pride to sit down in front of somebody and simply ask for some help. And a lot of things that I'm doing and have done since 2017 have been a direct result of that relationship and just going and seeking some guidance. So it was a hard decision to put my pride to the side at the time, but it's paid out tenfold.
Yes, definitely. Steve, what about you?
I'm gonna feel really tough to follow all these answers. I would say number one for sure by far was deciding to partner up with Eric Brewer on a project. That was definitely the worst, most difficult decision I ever made. But then following up after that was last year. I've shared a lot, right? Like we had to make a decision on what expenses we were gonna cut, and I know the consensus, not consensus, but the overall majority says you gotta let people go. And I made the decision to not let people go at the expense, of revenue, right? Because we had to cut back marketing to keep everybody. But for me, it was not as important to me to make money in 2022 as it was to make sure I had all the right people for when things shifted in 2023 so that we could, take over massive market share with the right people. Because finding people is so freaking hard, So for me, I made a conscious decision to not try to make profit, right? Not lose money, but not focus on profit, but to keep the people so that when things change, I will have the best team in the Phoenix market. So that was a tough decision because that was not the popular decision.